Hey, and welcome to Spotlight On. Right now I am in studio with Heather Tom. She is a 5-time Emmy nominee. It is so exciting. I'm hoping she brought them in her purse. Don't go away.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Nice.
Okay.
I love the clapping.
Yeah, my people.
Heather brought an entourage of 200 with her. And they're all in studio now. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing these people. Not really. This is just an awesome sound effect, you guys.
I'm gonna have an app on my phone that just follows me around. I'll just press it and I'll be like, yeah, it's my applause.
I think I am too. I mean, there has to be one somewhere that exists
I'm
already
sure,
like
yes.
this. We need it. So anyway, I'm your host, Zoe Hewitt, and I'm here today with Heather Tom. Now, Heather, before we get going, where can everyone find you on social media?
You can find me at BB Heather Tom on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook.
And I'm Zoe Hewitt. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Zoe Said What. That's Zoe Said What. And Heather, you were here for an hour already talking to James about Bold and Beautiful Breakdown, which is fantastic. So I thought we would go way back and start with all things growing up Tom.
The beginning.
Yes,
way back
at
to the beginning.
We will be here for the next 2,000 years.
Exactly.
So one of the things that I think is really cool about your story is that you moved out here with your two siblings. Mm-hmm. So David and Nicole, who are twins, incidentally.
Yes.
And you guys moved out here together, and then what? Did it bring you closer together as siblings?
Well, we are very close as siblings. We came out when it was 1990, and it was right after the writers' strike here in Hollywood, and so that meant that there was a lot of work. And I was 12, my brother and sister were 10, and my best friend, and now manager, who has been my manager for the last, so many years. But he said, come on out and sleep on my floor, and I will send you out on some auditions, and you can come out for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And so we were living in Seattle at the time, and we decided to come down. We slept on his floor for 2 weeks, and at the end of 2 weeks, I had booked a job, who's the boss. My brother had booked a pilot and a play and a commercial, and basically we were here. And the rest is history.
And so had you known this friend beforehand? Because nowadays I can't imagine a parent saying, yes, take my 3 children and let them sleep on your floor.
Yeah, my mother came with us. Yes. I've known him since I was 10. So he was choreographing a show that I was in Seattle. And he worked with my mother at an agency, a talent agency in Seattle. So we knew him from there, and he came down here, and and basically it was like, I don't have any clients. I am a new agent at this agency, and I don't have anyone to send out, and there's tons of work going on. So come on down, and that's pretty much how it happened.
Well, that's a really great coincidence. I mean, how serendipitous that he was looking for clients. It was right after the writer's strike, and hey, the 3 of you were ready to go.
Yeah.
As well. And Who's the Boss at that point, too, was huge. I mean, I feel like it was the equivalent of what the Big Bang Theory is now. Just a huge show on TV with huge stars.
Yes.
And when you booked that job, did you even realize at that age what a big deal it was?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I had been in the business for a long time, and so I knew that booking something like that was a big deal. And it's interesting that the business has changed so much. And it used to be that you did guest stars, and that's how you kind of broke in, and you would do a guest star and guest star and guest star, and then maybe you would test for a pilot, and then maybe you'd get a show. And now it's guest stars are going to stars, movie stars. I mean, it's not as easy as all that. And so booking something like that was a big deal. And I have such vivid memories of it because it was so amazing. And I worked with Danny Bottaro, and it was like my first kiss, which is very
And I was going to say, for anyone who doesn't remember Heather's very first turn on Who's the Boss, so she was a new neighbor, and she and Danny were a bit smitten with each other.
And I was overly endowed. And so I stuffed my bra for the audition. And so I was like 12 years old, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get this job, and so went in, and and so that was kind of the joke, is that I was like this overly developed, like 13-year-old, and he was this like little pipsqueak, and I was like, come here, yeah, so that was kind of the joke.
And so was everyone really welcoming on set?
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome, and funnily enough, I worked with Tony Danza years later on a movie of the week, and so it all kind of came back around.
And did you say, like, you were my first job? Did you feel like you had that gushing moment because he was from your first show?
Yeah. And you know, the great thing about Who's the Boss, too, is that they really, like, you know, we went to the after party, and we, you know, they were very kind of inclusive with their guest stars.
So that is really nice because shows have very different feels depending, of course, on where you are and who's doing what.
Yes.
So it's good that, like, your first time was
very positive. Yeah.
And so from there, you went on to Young and the Restless almost just a couple years later, right?
Yeah, I mean, I did Movies of the Week, and I did more guest stars and things like that, and that is kind of how it works. You know, you audition for something, and you don't really know what it's going to turn into. And when I auditioned for Young and the Restless, it was just another audition, and you know, at that point, it wasn't even considered a contract role. It wasn't contract, you know, until about 6 months after I started. And it was like, I don't know, a year or 2 years later, I was like almost 15. And walked in, and Bill Bell was like, thank you for coming in. And that's like the kiss of death. That basically means thank you for wasting your time, you know? And so I left, and I was like, okay, well, whatever. And I got that. And I had no idea what it would ultimately turn into. And I'm beyond grateful for the career that I've had in daytime. You know, basically pretty much worked consistently for the last 25, 26 years. And it pretty much all started there, which I can't be grateful enough for that.
I mean, it is amazing, and despite the couple of years in there where I'm sure there were just as many rejections as jobs booked, just because that's life, I mean, it's still amazing that then you got this job, and then very shortly after, your very first Emmy for Outstanding Young Actress. And so where were you when you first heard about the nomination even?
Well, I was at work, and I mean, I you know, it was just kind of a surreal thing. Like, you're kind of thrown into the middle of this world, and nothing seems, you know, real. You know, I mean, when I first went to work, I would get scripts in my dressing room, and it would just be like Christmas. I'd be like, oh my God, I can't see what's going to happen. I can't wait to see what's going to happen next. And it was just so much fun, and it still is. It still is. But it was just like every day was something new. And you know, Bill had this amazing way of sculpting a character, and he really like had a vision for that character and where that character was going to go years and years and years down the road. And so it was very exciting to work in that kind of environment. And so when an Emmy nomination came around, of course it was like, oh my God, it was, you know, just kind of mind-blowing. I mean, when I first started, we had ratings that were like 11s, you know, 12s, like what Nighttime aspires to now. And so, you know, the amount of people that watched back then was just, you know, huge. And our ratings are doing very well now, but it's just like, you know, Nighttime TV doesn't have those kind of ratings, you know. And
I think soap fans are like a different breed of fan, because
absolutely
they're much more passionate, and I don't know if that's because you're on 5 days a week,
it
so
absolutely
you don't get
is.
that otherwise.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, we are in people's living rooms every day for decades, and for half a century in some cases, you know, I mean, you know, just forever. And so, and, you know, my character on this show has been around for a long, long time, but I've been playing her for 9 years. And so for 9 years, almost every day, someone has seen me in their dress, you know, in their living room, going through my most intimate moments, going through the worst, you know, case scenarios, going through my most joyous moments. And so you do feel like you know, they have a life of their own. They do. They live. And I think that's part of the reason why I'm so protective of my character, because I love her, and I want to protect her, and I want to protect her integrity, and, you know, she has a life. And I think that's very unique to our, you know, and we have the best fans. I love when people have really strong opinions, and they all have very strong opinions about what's happening. That makes me feel like, oh, you're paying attention, and you're tuning in. I love that. And also, I've been victim to it, because I watch all the shows, so I know everybody, and so I've gone up to many people before. I'm like, hi. And I walk away and I'm like, I don't actually really know that person. So yeah, so I understand how it happens.
And I love that happens to you also.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so,
I'm a fan as well.
Which is really important, because you want someone who's doing what they love. And if you don't love it, why would you be doing it?
Yeah, and I also feel like we have a small community. It's gotten smaller. Hopefully it doesn't get any smaller than it is right now. But it's a small community, and so over the years I have either worked or certainly met virtually everyone in this community. And so I want to know what their work is. I want to know what they're doing. I want to know, what their stories are. And I think that's very important to kind of, make sure that I'm, keeping in touch with what everyone's doing.
And the fact that you've been playing on Bold and the Beautiful now for 9 years, the same character, it's interesting because not many actors have the opportunity to play the same character for such a long time. There are very few, in fact. And especially the amount of television that you're doing, proportionately, that's the equivalent of like 18, 20 years of the same character if you add up all of your hours and half hours.
Yes.
And so within all of that time, you must also get a lot of fan mail. What is the most interesting letter that you've ever received?
Oh gosh, I don't know about. We do get a lot of mail. I think that what I find very interesting right now is that social media has really changed the way this works. I still get a lot of letters and things of that sort, and people send me stuff and send stuff for Zane, which is just amazing, and it blows my mind. I'm so it's just so amazing that people do that and take the time to do that. But social media has made it where we are really intimately connected with our fans. We can have a personal, individualized conversation with somebody. That can be good and also not so good. People can be brutal, but I think overall it's really good. I mean, like for instance, I went through a real difficult time with my mother. She was ill, and I stuck it out there on social media and said, "Hey, it kind of makes me emotional because I stuck it out there, and I had so much outpouring of support and love from people that I don't even know, and it really has changed the way we interact with our fans. I think, in most ways for the better. I really like it."
And definitely when things are positive, where you get that feedback, because with letters, which I sound so old school, do you get letters? Am I the only person who even mails my bills still with a stamp on them?
You may be.
Maybe. It used to be that you would get letters, and maybe you'd get a few at a time. So maybe early on you'd read them, but then after that there are bags of letters, and you can't keep up. So it's interesting, that social media makes it all so much more instantaneous and so much more present.
Yes, and also I do get all the letters that people send. So even, no matter if you're sending a letter, I get all of those. I read all of them. I try to get back to people. I'm very, I think that it's very important that we, it might not be as timely as anybody, would like, but I do that. And so, but yeah, it's not as instantaneous, obviously, as just putting a tweet out there and seeing if there's a response. And so, I don't know. It's interesting. It's something that I really had to get used to because I'm not really. I really resisted it. I was like, nobody cares if I'm going to the grocery store, and I would post stuff of before I had Zane, I'd post stuff of my dogs and this and that, and I started looking back to my posts. And I'm like, I look like the crazy dog lady of Glendale because all I have are pictures of my dogs, and it's just it really took me a long time to get used to taking care of that aspect of my job, and it is part of my job.
Right, and that people want that intense connection. Now, how old were you when you had your first fan encounter from someone in public who recognized you?
Well, I mean, it happened very, quickly after I started Young and the Restless because, we had so many people in this country, watching. I always say this country because I'm on a show right now that's international, and the fan reaction overseas is just off the hook. But so I mean, I was very young, and it was kind of one of those, like I said, kind of one of those soap moments where someone recognizes you and you suddenly go oh wow, you've seen me on TV. That's crazy. But I've always had really, really great experiences with fans. I've never really played a villain, so I've never had to deal with people throwing fruit at me in the grocery store or anything like that, which friends of mine have dealt with that.
And I've heard that if you play a bad anything, that people will attack you for it.
Yeah, I had one experience in New York. I played a character on One Life to Live, Kelly, and she found a baby. I don't want to say steal. She found it, and there was this woman one time. I was with a friend of mine. We were coming out of a Broadway show, and she grabbed me and she said, "You give that baby back." And I was like, okay, noted. You know,
And luckily you didn't have your son with you at the time.
no, this was like way before my son. Yeah, so but that was the closest I've gotten to like somebody like being kind of angry with me. So like overall, you know, every fan experiences have been very, very positive, and like I said, people are very passionate about their daytime, and I like that.
And it's fun to have something to talk about. I mean, that's what AfterBuzz is about, that we talk about all the great shows. And I used the term soap earlier, and that's an interesting term because some people just really love it and some people not so much. And of course, it comes from the soap commercials originally. But how do you feel about the term?
I'm fine with it. I mean, I don't really feel like, yes, I mean, I think that some people are like, no, it's a daytime drama and they want to give it that kind of respect. And I have no problem with that either. You know, but I mean, this is the genre that we are in, and it's a unique genre. You know, there really isn't any kind of thing like this. You know, we are in people's homes every single day. We have been for decades, as I've said, and I really feel like we are a guilty pleasure. You know, I mean, we are that kind of entertainment in the afternoon that people really still want. There's a big audience for this type of entertainment. And I don't really care if you want to call it daytime entertainment or soap operas or whatever you want to call it, as long as you're watching. I don't really care.
As long as they're eyeballs, then it's fun.
Yes.
And your brother actually also, when you were on, had a part on Young and the Restless, and you guys actually played a couple. Is that right?
No.
I thought you guys had couple characters.
Oh my God, I have to kick the visual out of my head right now.
You know what? That is on his Wikipedia.
Okay.
That is so weird then.
Well, okay, so what happened was, oh God.
Let's clear that up because, like, that is a weird casting.
That is really, like, that is therapy, like, for years and years.
I was going to ask how that was.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, this is not Game of Thrones. But, I played a character, Victoria, and he played a character, Billy Abbott. And he left the show first, and then I left the show, and then two other new people came in, Victoria and Billy Abbott, and they got together.
Afterwards.
Yes. So technically they were the same characters, but not the same actors. So yeah.
That's good, because I was thinking...
Because you were like, this is really weird. How do you do that?
Well, I was actually thinking, I wonder if casting really put so much thought into this, or if they were like, he's really good, let's bring them both. You know, that would have been very awkward.
Yeah, there's so much bad about that I can't even, like, I don't even want to talk about it.
And speaking, I guess, of siblings and or strange sibling things, do people mistake you for your sister often? I think you guys look so similar.
You know, it's funny, as we've gotten older, it happens more often. I mean, she's 2 years younger than me, but at a certain point that doesn't really mean much. And all of the Toms look alike. Like, you know, I look like my brother, my sister, we all kind of look alike. And it's funny because my son looks exactly like me, and so I'm like, we must have very dominant genes in there somewhere. But you know, so yeah, I do sometimes. More so now than before.
And you produced a play together, and you and your sister sort of alternated the role. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, that was a long time ago. We produced a play, and actually,
I said we're going all the way back.
I know. Yeah. I mean, actually, right now we're developing a short film together. So she and I are writing it, and I'm going to direct it. And so hopefully, like, end of September, we're kind of looking to produce that and direct that and get that up as well.
And so, will the short film, what's the topic? What will it be about?
Well, right now we're talking about shooting it all in first person, so the camera is the eyes of the character. And I don't know if Nicole, we're talking about if she wants to play the girl in it, because we do get glimpses of her as the camera goes into mirrors and windows and things like that. But you know, it's interesting. It's a little dark, but yeah, we're working on it right now, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's been great working with her in that capacity.
I was going to say, because siblings seem to have either like a love-hate, and you know how to push each other's buttons.
Sure, yeah, that's true. Yeah, but I think we also have a very clear idea about our, you know, what we want creatively from things. She's so creative, and she has so many great ideas, and you know, so I mean, a lot of times she'll have a really great idea, and I'm kind of good at like wrangling it. And so we work very, very well with each other, and I think we both have a lot of respect, and my brother as well. We have a lot of respect for each other as, you know, creative people, and I think that translates a lot into our our relationships together. But yeah, we still push each other's buttons. I mean, that's just
Who doesn't? Right?
Yeah, come on. She's my sister. Yeah, I want to kill her a lot of times.
But it's nice because then you also have a shorthand for knowing that you can trust each other and respect each other, which I think also says then your parents, kudos to them, because that does not always happen. It's not like you guys all just share some DNA, so of course you'll get along.
I think that's true. Yeah, I mean, we had a very, my mother definitely made sure that we kind of had our feet on the ground and, and kept us kind of, moving forward together. And so I think that's definitely important.
And so you've got this short film coming, but you also, I guess now it's been a little longer ago now since we're going back, but not quite as far as the first Emmy. You also had a chance to do your first Broadway play. And that was something, was just a mic bump. That's okay.
Scared me there for a second.
I know. So for anyone who's not watching and just heard the bump bump. So you had the chance to be on Broadway, which was amazing, and you got to learn sign language for the role as well. Right?
Yeah, I worked with Phyllis Freelick, who won the Tony for Children with Lesser God, and it was a show where I played an interpreter, sign language interpreter, and so I learned sign language because she did not speak or hear, obviously, and it became quite fluent in it, and it was an amazing experience. It was very, it was a huge learning experience. So yeah.
And huge learning experience as far as, was it more intimidating being on the Broadway stage or using the sign language or a combination of both?
I don't really know that the sign language was an issue. It was more about learning, how to translate. And I think also about learning, in a broader sense, learning how to trust myself and how to place my trust in others. And I think that for me, it really taught me that I have to listen to my own instincts, and regardless of who the people behind a show are, who they are, I have to trust my own instincts and not hand all of my power over to somebody else. And I think that was a huge learning experience for me. It wasn't necessarily a fun learning experience, but it was a very important one.
And learning experiences so frequently are not fun experiences either. And it's interesting, too, because by the time you did this, you were so secure in your career. You'd been doing this for a long time. You had Emmys under your belt.
Is anyone ever secure in their career?
Well, that's the big question, right? So here it seems like you've, it should be no problem.
Right.
But still you had that trouble, which I think is a great lesson for everyone, that there's no point at which it's like, everything's great.
Yeah, no, I think we're artists and we're actors, which means we are in a state of insecurity constantly, no matter what. And that's probably why everyone thinks we're nuts, because we are. And I had a writing instructor once who said, when you're an actor, when you're a writer or director, you have this kind of schizophrenic brain where you, like, on one side you experience, everything that you experience in life, and this, maybe tragedy or joy or whatever, and you're experiencing that, and the other side of your brain is going, remember this. You can use this. And so even in your most tragic moments where you're just like, your life is in the garbage can, you're still going like, remember this, which is crazy, but that's what we do. And so if you're not constantly, being conscious of what you're doing and learning from what you're experiencing, then you can't create. And that's why we're all crazy.
Well, it's just interesting because it doesn't matter what thing you're doing, right? But you can still take it and bring it into your next job. Which is something that in any career, you can do. That hopefully you're learning from every experience as well, and that you can bring it with you. Yeah. And so with your short film coming up, what do you think are some of the lessons that you've learned along the way, which you'll really be able to pull in when you start shooting?
I think that I will listen to my own instincts. That's a big one. And I also think that casting the right people around you, just not only as far as actors go, but as far as crew, and really trusting that you have those people around you, it's so important, because then you're going to be able to be confident that you have the right, people that are going to be able to execute what you want.
And sometimes, too, you don't know if the people who are around you are going to work out in just the right manner. Either.
Right, and that's why you have to,
Trust your
still guide the ship, guide the ship, and trust your instincts. But yeah, but I think that, you can get a good sense, and obviously, if you've worked with people before, calling on friends or whatever, and you can, make sure that the dynamic is a good one.
And you also had an experience, I feel like you've got everything in so many different categories. You also had an experience in unscripted reality TV on HGTV because you have a design company, Renovation and Design with your husband, right?
Yes.
So
yeah.
what
do you got? We got whatever you want.
Yeah.
I'm just like, like how many jobs can I do?
Exactly. You want daytime, you want reality.
Yeah, whatever.
You want a short film, I've got it for you.
Just keep throwing butt at the wall and seeing what sticks. So yes, we did. We did a show for HGTV called Renovation Unscripted. And my husband and I still do design work. We're actually working on a project. I have to be on the job site tomorrow at 7 a.m. So we're still doing interior design and things of that sort. We our show on HGTV, we did 6 episodes. It was a very interesting experience. And I think that we would do something like that again under different circumstances, but I was so pregnant at the time. It was crazy. It was the hottest summer ever, and I was running around all over town doing these design projects just as big as a house. And it was just what did I get myself into? But yeah, but it was fun. I think the shows turned out really, really good.
And were there any big surprises? I mean, I think we all know and can acknowledge that unscripted TV is not truly unscripted.
Yes.
So we do know that, but it's also really easy to forget that. We were talking earlier about shows like House Hunters and House Hunters International. So where was that balance for you?
This is what I will tell you about that. We know that it's not, totally unscripted. However, there is a point where you kind of don't care that the camera's there, and you do say things or do things that you might not do if you really had a chance to step back and think about them. So I do understand how some of these other reality shows like Housewives or whatever, how these people go on there and you're why would they ever do that? They look and I'm I kind of get that, because there are moments where you're just I don't care that there's a camera there. I'm pissed.
Yeah.
And so I understand how that happens.
So was there anything then that you went back and saw and you were oh?
No, I mean, honestly, I think that they really did try to keep the show light and fun, and it was light and fun, but it was an enormous amount of work. I mean, way more work than I ever dreamed. Mostly because we were really wanted the show to look good, and this is what we do in real life, and I can't do a show that's not going to represent my work in the way that I want it to be represented. And so it was 16-hour days. It was just an insane amount of work. So yeah, but I think that was but I mean, like I said, the clients that we worked for were awesome. I think the projects turned out really well. I think the shows were fun and entertaining to watch. And it was, like I said, a very good experience overall. Just if I was going to do it again, it might have to be a different circumstance.
So do you think you would ever agree to a different type of reality show?
It's interesting because I always said, I would never do one of these shows. And but I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of I'm changing my tune a little bit. My friend Eileen is doing, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, and I've watched her on there, and I actually think she's come off really well. I think she's very smart. She doesn't really get into the fray a whole lot, but still kind of keeps her storyline going, because you have to have a storyline or you're going to get written off. And so I do look at that and I go okay, well, maybe I could do something like that, but you have to be careful and not drink too much.
That's exactly right. And so how much do you think is it a balance? Because in the shows that you're on now, in Bold and Beautiful, you can go to the writers maybe and be and I just had this great experience, nudge, right? If it's great to get it in there. Or, with the same thing, having your own storyline on more of a reality TV show.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I've never done really reality television, and we have a limited amount of nudge with the writers. I mean, pretty much they do what they want to do, and that's their job, and my job is to say the words and bring their vision to life. That's my job. And so those jobs are very clearly defined, and there's an open door, and Brad is amazing, and he we can go with questions or concerns or whatever, but ultimately it's his show, and he's going to tell the stories the way he wants to tell them. and so I mean, for reality television, I don't really even know how that works. I guess maybe I'll find out. Maybe I won't.
Maybe we'll find out when we see you as a new housewife. Right?
Exactly.
And I mean, you've really had a lot of experience working, speaking of the housewives, which makes me think of family, working with your family in so many different ways as well. And your son was on the show with you. What was it like bringing him onto set for an actual acting part?
Yeah, he was on the set for me from the very beginning, with me for the very beginning. I mean, I went back to work a week after having him, which I wouldn't recommend. Having never done the whole childbirth thing before, I was like, sure, I'll go back to work. Like, yeah, don't write me out. I'm cool. And like, it was, I wouldn't recommend it. But so consequently, he was, with me a lot from the very beginning. And at one point, I was just like, well, why don't we just use him because he's here and he knows me. And, and so we started doing that. And I think it's actually worked out pretty well. I don't know how much longer we'll do it. I do not want to be, stage mommy and run him to auditions. It's absolutely not happening. And I do turn into kind of like Mama Rose, like when he's on there and I'm not, I'm like standing behind the camera going like, smile, baby. And I'm just like, oh my God, I've been like possessed by, I'm a pageant mom. And I'm like, what is happening? So we're not going to do too much of that. But as long as he's enjoying it and as long as it's not interfering with like school or anything like that, then we'll keep doing it. But I think we might be kind of nearing the end of that. And it's been a good run. I mean, it's so awesome to think that I have that much footage of him, like since he was 4 months old. Yeah. And these fans do amazing things. They do like these montages of him and they put him on you. I mean, like something that I would never be able to do for myself. Like they do it and it's all, I'm hitting this thing again.
Because it's so exciting.
I know. And, so it's amazing. I go down, I love that stuff. It's awesome.
And it's cool because it's not just like the grandparents who are doing these things.
Yeah.
You have millions of people who are ready to make videos
and
of
they
your child.
do this awesome stuff that I'm just like, why didn't I do that? Like you think like, oh, I'm going to do all this stuff and collages and things and like you never do it. And like I have this great person that just did it for me. It was awesome.
And do you ever comment and then people say like, are you really Heather?
I do comment on, and I also like they put it to music and stuff like that. So it's great. And I also kind of like I download it and and show my husband. He's just like, that's awesome. So yeah, it's great.
And one of the other things you do is that you're very active. You use your name and you use the recognition for things like Rock the Vote, and you've recently become the face of a child charity as well. And of course, I don't have a Child Help USA.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I was like, child, there is a child. So how involved will you get your son, and how will you get him involved?
I think that, I think it's very important for young people to be as involved in the political process as they possibly can. And I think that starts early. I don't think that starts when you turn 18. I think that starts, kind of now. I'm very involved in women's health issues and causes, and I want him to know about that. And I also want him to know about the political process and know that voting is important and people have died for this right and this is something you don't take for granted. And so I take him into the voting booth with me and we talk about the issues. And he's 3.5 years old, so he's not, not going to talk to him about everything. But I say like, hey, this is why why mommy's voting for this, or why, these are the issues involved here. And he actually gets a lot more than what you think. I think I look at this election cycle right now and it's kind of scary in a lot of ways for me. I go, well, I'm not sure how much how do I explain some of the things that are coming out of, these candidates' mouths. And I'm not really sure that I really want to explain this because I don't know that it's explainable, but maybe it is a teaching moment. You can say, yeah, well, this is why we agree or why we don't agree with this, way of thinking.
And so did your parents start early with you? What made you decide to start going in this direction?
My father was very, he's very conservative. I am not. He used to call me his little Jane Fonda.
And I'm not entirely sure that was meant as a compliment.
No, I don't think it was. But he was very open about discussing, the issues. We used to read the front of the New York Times every morning. I read the New York Times every morning. I don't necessarily read the front page, to him right now, because there are things on there that I don't think he really needs to know about, like shootings and things of that sort. He doesn't need to be bothered with that right now. But my father, we would read the front page and we would discuss things and we would discuss politics and we would debate. And I think that it was very, it's very important to have those opinions validated from a young age and say that, I may not agree with you, and he didn't agree with me in a lot of respects, which is kind of amazing that I had those views because he certainly didn't. But he validated them, and he allowed me to have them. And I think that was very, very important, and I certainly want to foster that in my son as well, even if he becomes a conservative.
Like, I'll still love you, honey.
Oh, God.
Well, we all need hopes and goals.
He's only going to rebel at one point, and and it's just, I'm just hoping, because my husband's a musician and I'm an actress, I'm hoping he's just going to rebel and be like, Mom, I want to be a surgeon. And I'll be like, I'm very disappointed, but okay.
If you insist, Tony.
Exactly.
If you insist.
Yeah.
And so how important do you think it is to do these things, having a recognizable face and using your fame as a jumping off point to encourage people to do this as well?
Yeah, I think that I have a platform and a forum that others might not. And I think that it's important for us to be informed, I think, is the biggest issue. Like, don't talk about things that you don't know about, so read up and make sure you're informed. And then, and if you feel strongly about something, then you should stand up for it. And you should be able to defend it. And it's a little, I will admit that it's a little scarier with social media. I find that social media is not always, it becomes a little censoring. I don't think that it's as free as what people would like to believe in the exchange of ideas and things of that sort. I know that I worked for Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2008, and it's a much different campaign cycle now with social media, the way it is now. Even though we had social media then, it's not the same thing. And so it does, I think you do kind of weigh things in a different way when you put things out there. But I think you have to put them out there.
And do you ever worry then that your political views and being so vocal about them will lead to either, more not getting a job than getting one?
I think that's part of being willing to stand up for what you believe in. And like I said, I think you do weigh things differently. I think you say, like, well, if I'm going to put this out there, then I better be able to stand behind it. And and I also think that, hopefully the pendulum will swing back the other way, and it won't be as vitriolic if people don't agree. I think that sometimes it gets very mean-spirited, and I think that's a dangerous place where I think where ideas are squashed because people are afraid to put them out there. And so hopefully we can find a balance in that.
And speaking of Hillary Clinton and her campaign, she's actually a Tony winner. And her Tony is at the library in Arkansas. You have 5 Emmys that we talked about, and I know they haven't fit in your purse. So where do you keep them at home?
They're in the living room.
All 5 in a row?
Yes. They're on a table right now. Basically, they're far away from where Zane can get them because they're dangerous.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. This has been wonderful. Where can everyone find you on social media if they want to talk about your characters or they want to rock the vote?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm at BB Heather Tom, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
And I'm Zoe Hewitt. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Zoe Said What. That's Zoe Said What. You can also find me on YouTube at Zoe Hewitt Hosting, where I do a weekly movie analysis show. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great week ahead. Bye-bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz, see you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.